I welcome you all to Nalanda, where we are running the track Talent, Leadership and Governance. Before we start the session, I just want to let you know that at this event, for the first time, we've been looking at capturing the key insights and the key thoughts of the day through live scribing. You can see Chitra Chandrasekhar towards the side of the stage. She's from Graphies. She's a visual scribe for the day, and she's going to be capturing the main insights from this session. And afterwards, we are going to place them in the learning arc, which is in the atrium just outside this hall. We will now start our session, Compensation Philosophies for the Social Sector, How Much is Enough? We have on panel with us leaders from diverse social sector organizations. They will be participating in a rapid Q&A session, sharing their perspectives and thoughts on compensation in the social sector. This will be followed by an interactive Ask Me Anything session. The session is being moderated by Gaurav Shah. He's the co-founder and director at ISDM, and I hand over the stage to Gaurav now.
Hi. A warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us for the first session on talent, leadership and governance in the first edition of Dialogues on Development Management. A warm welcome to all of you. It's very rare that we have leaders from such diverse organizations sitting on stage together to talk about a topic which is relatable to all of us. I was going to say close to our hearts, but I don't know whether it's close to everyone's heart. It can be a big pain also. And the idea of compensation, but it's definitely relatable to all of us. Every day, every week, every month, every year, we are dealing with issues regarding compensation. And the topic is how much is enough. And when we were thinking about this, we were like, there have been lots of sessions on technical aspects of compensation. So how should it be structured, what should be fixed and what should be variable and how much should be each, how do you measure performance to talk about compensation. But we rarely have had sessions where people actually share what they feel. So I'm hoping that over the next 1 hour, it's going to be more a feelings sharing session rather than a thoughts sharing session. My speakers are not happy about that because this was a googly. But yeah, there's enough cognitive conversations which happen, but it is a pain on many levels for all of us. So I hope we can very openly, frankly, and honestly share what we really feel about, the idea of compensation for the social sector and for social change and for talent in the social sector. As I said, this diversity is very, very rare. So, and this diversity pervades across all elements. So from size, so small and not so small organizations, rural, urban, international, domestic, across thematics and organizations spread across the country. I think we are very, very honored to have all of you. Please join me in warmly welcoming our speakers, and let me very quickly introduce them. From the furthest, we have Harkesh Dabas, who's Managing Director, William J. Clinton Foundation, India. We have Parul Khandelwal, who's Director HR from the American India Foundation. Matthew, who's the Country Director, was supposed to join us today, but because of the prevailing set of viral fevers, which is doing the round, I think Matthew is down with that. We have Sanchita Mitra, who's National Coordinator of Seva Bharat. We have Uthara Narayanan, who's got a very interesting title. Maybe she should talk to us later about it. She calls herself Chief Change Maker and co-founder Bas Women. And we have Osama Manzar, who is founder and director of Digital Empowerment Foundation. So from health to education to livelihoods to gender and women empowerment to digital and to digital inclusion, we have the works here sitting on the table with us. The objective of this session, and Simrita talked about it a little bit, is over the next 1 hour to collectively build an understanding of how people and organizations look at the idea of compensation. And the ideas can differ based on various realities. So based on organizational realities, thematic realities. Different thematic organizations pay very, very differently. Could be based on legacy. Older organizations, and I'm sure you've heard this, and I've heard this multiple times, that, look, I'm a 30-year-old organization. It's very hard for me to change compensation structures suddenly. But most importantly, the idea of compensation differs based on the kind of talent we are talking about. And for this session, and I'm honestly saying only for this session, we're looking at two broad pools of talent. And I'm hoping that we'll hear thoughts from our speakers around both pools. One is a set of talent that we hire, which comes directly from the communities we work for and work with, and maybe geographies adjacent to that. These are people who have a strong connect to context, who understand that milieu really well, and bring relevant skill sets therein. The other set of talent are people who are hired because they come with complementary skill sets to talent pool one, and possibly complementary educational backgrounds as well. They could be for organization building, they could be for programs, they could be for fundraising, communications, strategy, data. There are many kinds of talent. Really hope that over the next 1 hour, this session is devoid of judgment. I really, really hope that it's devoid of judgment, because judgment can kill any honest sharing that is possible. And the reason that it should be devoid for judgment is that any of the questions we asked today and you asked today don't have right answers. So pretty much all of these answers will be either responses or reactions to current realities. So thank you very, very much. As Simrita said, we're going to start with a rapid fire for about 25 minutes. And it's a rapid fire and not a panel discussion, because our panelists have committed that they will restrict their responses to a maximum of 2 minutes and not more than that. And so we're literally going to go zoom, zoom, zoom. And post that, we're gonna have an Ask Me Anything or a Q&A with the audience. Are there any Bollywood buffs here? Just one? Two? That's it? Very skewed audience. I'm not very happy with the audience here today, but just 5 Bollywood buffs here. How many people here have seen the movie Chakte? Okay, many more. So when we were thinking of the rapid fire, my mind actually went to the closing sequence of the movie Chakde, where you have this riveting penalty shootout, which is happening between the Indian and the Australian women's hockey team in the finals of the World Championship. And before every shootout, the referee actually starts by asking 2 questions. Any buff here who remembers those 2 questions? Yes. Striker ready and goalie ready. So let me start with that. Audience ready? Speakers ready? Yes. No. We will still go ahead. Right. Thank you so much. Warm welcome to all of you, and let's get started. So, Harkesh, let me start with you and with you, Sanchita. If you had to counsel young people who are looking to build lives and careers in the social sector about how they should approach the question of compensation, what advice would you share with them? And it could be on anything, how much to expect, what to expect, how much is enough. It could be anything. Maybe we'll start with you, Harkesh, and then we'll move to Sanchita.
Right. Right. Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for being in this room. When prior to the session, when it was being planned, we had all sort of exchanged thoughts and as to how should we structure this particular session, and I have never got over my nervousness of public speaking, and therefore I was inclined to first rehearse my answers, and then I said, I'll be perhaps have a lot of young audience, in this session, and therefore need to come out with absolute honesty and through the lens of my experiences, with over 30 years of now experience now in varied fields. I would say what young people are now looking for has changed over a period of time. From when I started out and even when I joined this particular organization about a decade ago. at a point in time, and if I were to look at through my own lens, I joined the armed forces principally because I saw it as a calling. And that inspired me in the initial years that I was in the armed forces because nothing else was important. But as life went by, you start seeing, different demands on yourself, both in terms of you as an individual, as also a family man, and therefore your perhaps lens changes slightly. It becomes more of a rational economic actor who's trying to maximize his or her gains as they go along. But this question about how should you look at and what you should really look at. I have two young sons. The older one has just joined, another firm. And at the point in time when I was looking at coaching and mentoring him to really see as to what he should be doing in getting a fulfilling and purposeful life, and that's what my advice to the young people would be. That there are, multiple components to a fulfilling life. What's the purpose of your life? What is the financial rewards that you get? What are the non-financial rewards you get? How much you're going to learn? What kind of environment you want to work in? What is the work-life balance that you're looking at? So there's so many multiple faceted aspects of, of making choices as a young person when you're joining a firm or an organization or choosing a career. For me, at a young age, what you're really looking for is finding that purpose. What is my life worth going to be? Or how am I looking at my life right now as to where do I find meaning? Number one, sure, that comes with financial rewards, but perhaps at a young age, more modest financial rewards. Then as you progress along, perhaps your demands on finances become higher and higher. But in the first stage, are you learning enough? Are you in an empowering, enabling environment? Do you have scope for failure? And do you have great people working with you? I think those are the things that I would really look at.
Thanks, Harkesh, but you very kindly sidestepped the conversation on compensation. These are things that we'll tell people on how to look at careers, but Sanchita, I'm going to go back to you with the same question. What advice would you give youngsters on how they should look at the idea of compensation if they're looking to build lives in the social sector? Is it not working? Let's try another mic.
Thank you for inviting me here. The question is very interesting, and I think I face this question each day. And how I address it is, first of all, who are these people that we are talking about? They're people who have higher education, and they have spent a lot in higher education, either taking loan or otherwise. And they are also people who do not want to stay with their parents, who want to lead an independent life. And they also use the internet a lot, which means they work throughout the day and a part of night, which again means that they would like to have some vacations. What I'm saying is these are expenses or a starting point that we have to recognize. So I think they have to be compensated with a comfortable life to start with an independent life, and also in between vacations. So that's the starting point. When it comes to career, I feel a little nervous about it because, something which is not very permanent. And for women, it is very prevalent. At one point, they give up their careers and make choices. And in an organization like ours, which is Seva, which is based on a movement and more to give than to think about one's own self. So that is how it started. Many people joined us, educated people, not thinking about what career they would make, but what to give to these women. So I think I would counsel, and that is how I counsel is, you may make career in many places, you may have a designation, you may have a fat compensation package, yet it is very difficult to find a purpose in life. I think in our organization or organizations like ours, the purpose of life is guaranteed. In other organizations, it is not. The second part is when you find the purpose and you are ready to serve, I think sometimes you also find your own identity. And you understand that many of your problems that you're cribbing about becomes very small in front of the problems that you see on a daily basis when you're interacting with people. And when you're trying to solve those problems, trying and sometimes successful, sometimes not successful, you gain self-respect. I think that is another thing that you get here. And I think there is a lot in our organization because it grows organically. It's not very well defined. A TOR is also not very set in stone. So there is a lot of freedom to express. There's a lot of understanding you gain. There's a lot that you learn, and there's a lot of scope that you can give. I think these are the value additions that I would tell them about.
Thanks, Sanchita. I think, again, going back to factors on why people should join the social sector, and clearly compensation, from what I hear from both of you, is not amongst the top 5 factors. I'm going to come back to you, Harkesh, on that question. I'm going to come back to you. Uthara and Osama, next set of questions to you and both of you. In an interview, and I'm sure you all spend a lot of time interviewing people, what can candidates say about compensation that would leave both an adverse impression on you and or a positive impression on you?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It is quite a complicated conversation, not a question, but the panel itself and the rapid fire. And we've been struggling with this, and it has been keeping me awake for the past 2 weeks because there are no straight answers, obviously. But to this question, the straight answer is there for me. One is I do not like candidates who don't do their homework and come. Whether it's about compensation, knowing the market, understanding. It's very easy, by the way, because all of our financials are on our website. Candidates who do not look at our website and say, hey, this is the range or this could be the range. You can easily guess that depending on the size of the organization, the number of people who are there, whether it's grassroots focused, whether it's advocacy focused. People who do not do that homework leave a very adverse impression on me. The favorable one, obviously, is the opposite. Also, the favorable one is people who have, the candidates who have a long-term view. I seem to be missing that in the youngsters nowadays. People are taking very short-term views on compensation. And for me, by the way, I think the question itself, we need to change a bit. Probably Harkesh would give a direct answer then. The question on compensation is different from the question on salary, wage. Because here, compensation, you can be compensated with emotions as well, which is what I think both of them are mentioning. What should be the salary? It's pure economics. Because I feel the question on compensation, there are 2 aspects, economics and emotions. Economics, probably we can talk more about it. There are components to that, some of which is not in the control of founders or directors or leaders of the sector. But emotions are definitely in our control.
That's very interesting. And what you call emotions, I'm guessing, is what Sanchita called purpose. It's
Combination of purpose, culture, values,
many things.
agency, voice, all of it.
Okay. Osama, your response to this question.
Can you ask the question one second?
Sure. What could a candidate say in an interview about compensation that would leave a favorable impression in your mind about them or a not so favorable impression?
So I really don't know if I have an answer to that, but most of the time, and the kind of people we get to interview or talk are, number one, based on references, mostly. Where, the first line of career-oriented looking for job is already cut out. So your interview is mostly based on counseling rather than figuring out what compensation will go. I have also not faced most of the people asking about compensation upfront, but rather we ask that your last withdrawal was this much, and that's the reason why we were not calling you, because it is beyond ours. And if that is your concentration, that this is the kind of level that you are looking at, we are not the right place. And then the conversation starts, no, that's not my first priority. And we usually lead to conversation where what's your need rather than what's your desire, or what's your package and what's your competitive package in the market. So that is settled slightly separately as one of the pillars of working together, but certainly not the primary focus on that one. The second is that sometimes, for example, very recently, we got somebody working in a known organization sending a mail that we want to work with you, and I was interested. I immediately called her. I said, what's your current takeaway? She said 1.6. I said, let's not meet then. No, I want to meet. That's not the purpose. I have written it on the biodata, but that's not what it is. And then we start conversation. And then also it leads to listen, you will never be able to mentally, settle yourself if you're working on lesser compensation. So are you really out of it and you are just in early 30s and things like that? So that's the kind of conversation happens in most of the things. But bottom line is that compensation is not the first criteria on which we build relationship. But it is need-based and not desire-based.
Sure. Thanks, Osama. Parul, for you, and slight twist on the same question. What are the kind of reasons we have heard, and collectively, we do so many interviews, we have heard being shared in interviews to convince people to come in at lower compensations to the social sector?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Gaurav.
Parul, if you could just speak into it a little bit louder.
Am I audible now? Okay, great. So, your question was that, can you please repeat?
What kind of reasons do we normally hear in interviews trying to convince people to come in at lower compensations into the social sector?
So, I'll speak about this from a general lens and then about how we do this at AIF. I've heard interviewers talk about many aspects before they even come to the compensation point. You talk about the job profile, you talk about what a person is really going to do. Who are they going to work with? Who are these people that they are going to engage with? You talk about how what they do is going to really lead an end outcome, which could be inspirational, which could be quite motivational, which could be a much larger than yourself kind of a thing, where a lot of youth also connects with, because you're talking about impact, and talk about impact at scale. And then, of course, there are a lot of conversations around perks. So if I can't talk about the salary I can give you in your account, I'll tell you what else can I give you. And these are the things that we see interviews really revolve around. At AIF, one of the things that has really proved very positive for us is that when we scout for talent, we first establish a compensation fitment. That's literally the first thing we do, where we have very transparent conversations to tell people, hey, in terms of your pay, this is what we can offer you. In terms of your benefits, this is what we can offer you. If this works, let's discuss if this is a right fit for you. And that's how we've been able to address that in our interviews.
Thanks, Parul. An open question to all of you, and anyone can choose to pick this up. From a larger, you wanna come back to your question, Harkesh? Okay, it's burning.
Can you answer that again? Can you repeat the question again so that I go to it?
The first one?
Yes.
How would you counsel, what advice would you give young people in terms of how they should approach the question of compensation if they are looking to build lives and careers in the social sector?
Okay. Thank you. This is going to be a slightly longer answer. How many of you have seen the video of a research where there are two monkeys? Monkey one is offered cucumber. Has anyone seen it? Okay. It's a video on YouTube. You should watch it and influence me a great deal. And I'll tell that story also in good time. So there's this video where there are two monkeys. A researcher offers the first monkey cucumber. The monkey takes the cucumber, eats it. And every time the cucumber is given, a piece of cucumber is given, the monkey eats it happily. There's an adjacent cage where there's another monkey, and this time the researcher offers the other monkey grape. This monkey sees that he's been offered a grape. Next time a cucumber is offered, he throws the cucumber at the head of the person, at the researcher. So, how much is enough? First of all, I was, having been part of an international organization that works across 34 countries, we took a very, very progressive step way back in 2012, which said that we must pay equally for equal work across all geographies, right? And therefore, our compensation in any case is higher than the market, comparable market, if you were to say, within India per se, right? However, we do have colleagues and young people, someone who's coming from a management consulting background. We may or may not be able to match those compensations. Someone who made the choice to deliberately go to development organization. Now, if I were to compare where they're coming from and what their compensation is and set my compensation by those yardsticks, then there'll be massive inequity that we are creating within the organization. And therefore, as young people, I would say demand. So first of all, I think a great practice for any organization is to be transparent with the employees about what are they paid, why are they paid as much, and how we're ensuring fairness, transparency, and equity within the organization. But for young people, demand your worth. As simple as that. Demand what you think is the value that you bring to the organization. Because if, and I think earlier today, there was a comment which was made that the biggest reason for people leaving organization is 60% of people cite compensation as an organization. As an organization, it's very difficult in any case to attract talent. And to do with that kind of turnover, it's even more challenging. And therefore, advice to young people, demand your worth, demand fairness, demand transparency as to why you're being paid as much as you are. And I think those are, a bedrock of any, thank you, apart from purpose.
Thanks, Harkesh. Open question to all of you, and then I'll take some questions from the audience. From a larger societal lens, does level of compensation act as a proxy of seriousness and importance of work? I'm going to repeat it. From the larger societal lens, does the level of compensation act as a proxy of seriousness and importance of work? If so, and you may feel free to disagree, if so, do our salary levels contribute to a certain stereotype about the sector?
To answer that, the first thing is who's deciding on the benchmark right now? Who do you think is deciding?
All of us collectively.
Okay. Who do you think is deciding? Do you think organizations themselves are deciding? Donors are deciding. Okay. Who else? It's a demand supply. Okay. That's what she feels. Anybody else? Funders are deciding. Who else? Market demand and supply. Demand and supply again, yeah. So people are deciding the compensation.
When we're working with the poor people, and that's also a way the social sector has always decided salaries. If you're working with poor and you're going to take lakhs of rupees, that doesn't go with the value.
Okay, so I'm going to split it into two. What I said in the previous sentence, economics
But
and
please
emotion.
focus on what he said.
Yes,
Can I
that's
have
the
your
emotion
name, sir?
side.
Ronak? Okay. I don't know if you all could hear what Ronak said. Ronak said that there's almost a disconnect. If you're working with the poor and you're getting lakhs in salary, it's almost a disconnect. And that, in some senses, that value, and I'm using the word value,
Yeah.
actually dictates a lot of our thought process regarding salaries as well. But over to you.
So I'm going to add that to the next component. There are two components that I see. One is economics. And all three are valid. By the way, it is not the management, the managers, and the team deciding it at all. So just to bust your myth, we do not decide half the time. There is something called, government has something called the Minimum Wages Act. So we are supposed to follow that. There is some bit of guidance that has been, guidelines that has been given by the government. The second is demand and supply. The two talent pool that Gaurav mentioned, the contextual talent pool, which is from the grassroots, from the vicinity of where the work is, seem to be more in supply right now, which is why, and the demand is less from the organizations, which is why we are getting away with paying a certain number. Even there, if you need a certain talent to come in, you always pay a little higher. The other thing that is deciding, on the other side, which is the talent pool, which is on communication, data, and things like that, the supply is very low. I have not found a fundraiser in 3 years. Yeah, this is a pitch, by the way. Please approach me. I have not found one within the budgets that I can afford. And that budget is decided by the funder. We have been told 5% cap, 4% cap. Some people say, no, you can stretch it till 15%. But you are constantly negotiating with the funder who is working with you, even on salaries. So it is not an easy decision to be made as a person who is heading an organization, because all of this plays a role. This is on the economic side. This is the thought side, which Gaurav said that don't do thoughts too much.
I'll have to request you to keep it short.
20 seconds. The emotional side, which he spoke about also, is what are the values do we stand for? And this I heard in 2015 at Sabarmati Ashram at a conference, where somebody from MKSS was on stage and he said, are we perpetuating the poverty that we are trying to alleviate? And that rings in my brain every single time, whenever budgets are in front, whenever I'm talking about money. Because sometimes the feeling is, because we are comparing ourselves to bazaar, which I feel, by the way, is a wrong comparison. We need to also compare to Sarkar, because the government is also a big employer and we are not comparing salaries there. We should be actually. If you compare to all three, I feel bazaar is overpaid. And I'm going to say it out loud. If only bazaar can reduce salaries by a certain percentage, as a country, we will prosper better for everyone. Bazaar is overpaid right now, unnecessarily. And it is also, even if you look at PPP, look at other countries, we have more super rich in India than in other countries.
Thanks, Uthara. Anyone else, and just one more, and anyone else who wants to respond to this question? If so, do our salary levels contribute to a certain stereotype about the sector?
Yeah, I mean, one is compensation is important in life because we deal in cash also. There is no barter system in life, unlike earlier. So compensation is important. But I think there is a very strong thin line between reasonable and what you call competitive. I would say the word competitive or comparative itself is a killer. Because there is no comparison. Corporate world works on making products where means is very important, product is very important. Social sector works for solving social problem of human beings. That's the end game. And if you are coming in that role to play your role in that end game, you might as well know it very well to be part of that supply chain, that where means is not the end, but the end, you are means to the end. And there is, this philosophy is very important to go into each and every one which is part of the supply chain. Whether it's employee on a PF role or what kind of, all those things. This is very important. I think this entire hiring system, the entire thing, this philosophy has to go into. And I think that is a bigger challenge in social sector, that every time, because all the more reason because most of the people who run social sector comes from corporate world, which is an irony, and there is a negative impact on that also, because they have the same Excel sheet to apply here. You know, and that is the biggest issue. If we instill that into the entire employment system or the compensation system, I think we will have to struggle less. You know, and since you word the use philosophy, I am being philosophical.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not being absolutely. It is philosophical. It is certainly philosophical that we have a different end game. We live on somebody else's money for somebody else. Nobody gives us money to spend on yourself. If this is not in
So, Osama, doesn't it get your goat? Doesn't it get your goat? And for everyone and the audience, that working on the issues that the social sector works on is way, way more complex. Way more complex. So if skill sets are in question, if the importance of work is in question, way more complex than selling credit cards. And yet, and you said we shouldn't compare to Bazaar. You're right, by the way. I do agree Bazaar is supremely overpaid. But you're still in the same, you are in the same ecosystem and coexisting together. We are not able to compete, and maybe we don't want to, compete on salaries. But I'm going to take a break here. I'm going to open it up to the audience. There's been some food for thought that's been shared by panelists. Anyone who has a question, do we have mics around? So we have some volunteers with mics. My request again, very short question. It really needs to be within, two lines. It has to be a short question. If it's pointed at someone, do ask them. Otherwise, anyone can take it up. We'll start with you, sir, and then you. Yes.
Hi. So, just a reaction to a point. Let's look at the social sector organizations like having all the chemicals in place. You have a pace of reaction, right? But you want to step up the pace. You want to increase the pace, right? And to do that, you may need catalysts. So I would say the two poles that we talked about, professionals at any place, be it grassroots or professionals who come from a different background, they want to cross over. They want to join the organization, but they need to be looked at in terms of the transferable skills that they bring. Do you need a catalyst, or you are happy with the pace of the reaction? That may also determine, whether you want to compensate at a higher level and break the stereotypes or not.
This is a philosophy. What Rana? Sorry, what?
I'm Puneet.
Puneet. What Puneet said is a philosophy. Is if you need talent of a certain kind, not everyone believes, by the way, that we need talent of a certain kind. And I'm guessing, Puneet, you're referring to talent pool 2.
Correct.
And therefore, do you need to compensate them better?
Yeah.
We'll go to you. Short question, please.
Yeah, it's hi everyone. So my simple question is, when we talk about the compensations, most of the time organizations talks about the values, the vision and the purpose. So who's ever applying for that particular organizational role had gone through with the vision and the purpose, and that is why he fits, or he or she fits for that particular role. What about the work culture balance about the organizations? When we talk about that it's all about the, I get the example that when you are working with the poor, getting a high compensation is very difficult for you. But what about the work culture of an organization when the person is, pushing the beyond the line? Then at that time, why the senior governance and most of the organizations are not thinking about it? So at that moment, sometimes it's, it's not give you, sometimes it makes you disconnect when you talks about the compensation, things are same for the work culture. So this is also the reason, how could you mitigate these things?
But thanks. I think that's a very important point, but it's not linked to compensation. I'm gonna leave it for the time being. But he's talked about the fact that even if the compensation is the same, organizations in the sector are not great at building a culture conducive for young people. And I'm assuming he's part of the young crowd here to work in. Anyone else? I'll come to you, ma'am. Aarti, I'll come. Okay. Aarti, and then, can I have your name? Urvashi.
Very short question. Do you think that compensation should be linked to performance only?
Do you think that compensation, actually that's a great question, and anyone here who would like to pick that up. Do you think that it should be linked to performance only?
Thank you so much. Again, I'm going to hark back to my example of being in the armed forces, where every 6 months to a year, depending on, what cycle it was, I went through something called an annual confidential report where I was marked across 30 different parameters numerically from 1 to 9. That was all at somewhere averaged out, and at some point in time when it came for my promotion or selection for a particular appointment, that numerical assessment, was used to compare my peers and me and say, okay, I found that system absolutely useless. I'll be honest. We don't have a performance management system within the organization. Just don't. And therefore, we don't grade people numerically. We don't write performance reports. We do not. What we do, however, is that we make it as part of the system that the managers get to sit with their, those that they supervise, at fixed times during the year, and that is only to make sure that it actually happens. But apart from that, we encourage people to actually, and therefore our compensation is independent of performance. What eventually does happen, however, if we find a colleague, not performing to the level that we want, then certainly what we do is, we put the colleague on performance improvement plans, and we support him or her through the journey of improvement. So that's about my organization, but I'm sure others may have different.
Any other comment? Short comment. Yes, Sanchita.
In our organization, actually, the performance management system, we designed it in a way because performance itself is dictated by many targets and goals, which in turn could be dictated by funders. So we have other criteria like the people we serve. How do you interact with the people you serve? Do you get their issues to the organization? How do you address these issues, which are not part of any project? So these are all behaviors or skills of communication and also your inclination. So that is also given a kind of a weightage.
So it's not just achievement, but the process which goes towards that achievement, which is part of performance and thereby compensation. Sure, small point.
Just to add, a quick addition, at AIF, we also look at two other things in addition to the behavioral competencies and the performance, which is outcome of your job. We also look at your potential. And is there a space for you to be compensated to grow into the next role or a different role? And how can that act as a fuel? And in addition to that, we also look at whatever is the market prevalence. What is happening in the market right now? Keeping aside all the other traits. So this is a sum total of the compensation we do.
Thank you. Anyone next? Urvashi.
Yeah. Wonderful session, firstly. Thank you so much. My question is that, is there a huge difference between different compensation at different levels? Like what is being offered to young professionals and what is the seniors are taking in the sector?
I can give my 2 bits. ISDM along with CSIP at Ashoka University had done a talent study and a compensation benchmarking study. Unfortunately, there were very few respondents to that study. This is the first time we did it. Hopefully, we'll get many, many more respondents. But on an average, the sector pays between a third to maybe 40% of what the corporate sector pays. On an average. And this changes across levels. Anybody wants to talk about how it changes across levels?
So I actually would like to just say that this is something we've been thinking about. At the time of hiring is the decision when it starts, and then it carries on through the journey, the trajectory. We don't look at seniority in terms of the number of years that you bring in. Most of the jobs that we look at people performing or actually growing into are based on what are the skills that you bring and how do you upskill yourself within those jobs. You could be a very firebrand 20-something and holding a portfolio as a department head. You could also be a 40-something and still be an individual contributor. Both coexist pretty well.
If I could just clarify to Aarti's question, so there is certainly, when we do use promotions and we do use merit-based increases. They're linked to, in some ways, to performance, but again, not a performance that we have matrices to measure against, but it's it's a sort of understanding of the leadership as to, how has that person contributed in terms of value to the organization. So.
To answer Urvashi, certain organizations, and ours also does it, the board said that we should have a cap that the lowest paid number should not be, or the highest paid number should not be more than 10 to 12 times the lowest paid number. And then you sort of split it across. Then you have bands and structures and things like that. We never had band and structure before. It was asked by the team because they felt that, I don't know, how do I move up? Where is it all placed? People seem to want structure. So smaller organization, when we were smaller, we could get away without much because it was transparent, it was depending on your skills, what you brought in. But as you grow, some bit of structure comes in. Does that answer?
I want to add to this. Based on what Uthara said, and in general, I feel that at the young level, and not going by what Parul has said, that's obviously true, but at the young level, the difference between what the sector pays and the external world is small. Is small, actually. In fact, I do feel that the sector pays competitively and reasonably well at the younger level. The issue starts happening when you start growing. So early 20s or mid 20s is not so much an issue, but early 30s, the issue starts expanding. And then that issue keeps expanding. And that gap between what we pay and what the external world pays, and of course, external world is largely bazaar, she's right, Uthara, starts expanding. The biggest crisis in my mind is at that mid-level, because that's when people start getting married, that's when people start having families, and that's where the real struggle of can we survive in this sector and manage families and manage all the expenses. Because by the time you reach the senior level, while the gap is huge, your compensation has reached some basic level of, I won't say comfort, but at least some basic. It's that mid-level. And that young level is also okay because you're the single mostly, That mid-level is a problem that needs to be solved because we lose a lot of talent. A lot of people start leaving the... So I'm going to ask this question, and this is for anyone in the audience or anyone here on stage. Is our sector more suitable for double income families? If so, what are the ramifications for talent in our sector? Is our sector more suitable for double income families, not single income families? If so, what are the ramifications for talent in this sector? Anyone wants to take a shot? Any of the panelists?
I may agree that might be true. I don't have a survey and all that. But what I would like to say is that there are enough talent in the market and there are enough people available for the work that you want, because in any case you have to train for two people to work in the social sector. There is nobody in the world who train you how to work with poor people, properly, with with empathy and compassion. In any case, you have to go through. So I think there are enough number to not even go into the comparative statistics or not. But yes, I agree that once you start working in the organization, and this is a practical challenge, that you grow in the organization, you suddenly get married, and then you think that I need this also, that also, and then it becomes an issue, and you may end up doing your own survey in the own organization. You find that, oh, सारे middle level वाले तो double income वाले हैं. That might be true. I haven't done that survey. We might find that one, but there will always be availability of that one. And the second is, this is particularly in our organization. We feel that hiring between 20 years and 35 years of age is workable. After that, it doesn't. Because people come with their own mindset, with their own baggages, and it doesn't really work. You start then otherwise a counseling center or a separate center for dealing how young people and the older people work together and things like that. But it works very well between 22 years of age and 35 years of age.
And the question of culture that the young man there said. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Do you have a mic?
When she gets a mic, I'm just saying, why shouldn't we be double income? Because the moment you say single income, no, it'll be the man's income. So I
No,
have
I-
a problem with that question itself.
No. See,
I
that
have a
is why
problem with that
I
question
carefully
itself.
worded
Agree?
the question.
Agree? Yes, all the women agree. Question
But I
ही गलत है
carefully
वहाँ पर.
worded the question, please.
Yeah, that question itself is wrong. Let us all be double income.
We should. I agree. I have
think
no
the
issues.
entire country should prosper that way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let the pie increase rather than say how do we get more of the pie. Yeah, that no, but single women
The
and
question
single
was not
families.
that.
When it's a double family, that's
Yeah.
the question.
That's what. No. And I've seen a lot of young people. I've seen the struggle, which is why the question that when one person, and I'm not saying man or woman. That's why I framed the question very clearly. If one partner is working and the other is not in the social sector, then it's very hard to come by. If both work in the social sector, it's easier to come by. I've seen more often than not that one works in the social sector and the other works in the corporate sector. Then it's relatively very easy to come by. But yes, ma'am. Your name and then your question.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm Pooja Mathur from Plan. I would like to answer the question you asked, Gaurav, and something from my own experience I would like to share. I was part of the corporate setup for a very long period. And of course, the social sector just pulls you sometimes, and that's what happened to me. So that was about, 12 years ago. And I think my journey has been very, good in that way. But it's also essential to know that, my spouse, who was part of another corporate setup, he found my experiences so riveting and so, really fulfilling that he made that transition last year. And he's now part of, the non-profit space, specifically the development space. So I think it goes both ways, It's always good to have, security, because economic security lets you do things which you really feel very strongly about. And I think for the partners to be in sync, that, okay, we are going to drive this together, it does not really matter. Even if as a couple, you're able to really achieve those objectives, I think that's what really matters. But compensation plays a very crucial role in any family's life, because you have so many other priorities apart from just what you want to achieve. I think there I wanted to put my question, and that's to the illustrious panel here, which is, you pointed out that people rise up, their career. And so for leaders, people who are sitting here, who are leaders in their own ways, how do you really balance it out? Your board has certain objectives. They want you to drive it in a certain way. And then there are people who are really driving those. So how do you make it meaningful for the people who are going to drive those really, vision, and still make it meaningful for them and their families to be associated?
Purpose over anything else. How do you drive purpose in your organization? Sanchita.
In our organization, I think the organizational ethos plays a very, very important role. To the extent we take it as a program. So, and time and again we have this. And we are based on certain values that we adopted from Gandhiji. But we are also trying to contextualize it with the present scenario. So taking live examples, that is very important for us, and to build up. So when you are very attached, when you grow attached, when you are attached to the ethos, and you value people, you value your own self because you're serving some purpose. I think we also, and it's a struggle, I'm not saying it's we are successful totally, but we also teach them to be valuing each other's work, how they complement each other. But unfortunately, when it comes to compensation, so there is the struggle that we have, but we are not putting that monetary value equally. So that's also a struggle part. So I think the ethos part we try to imbibe much more, because somewhere we are struggling with inequality of pay and that kind of compensation.
Yes. And I'm sorry, we're running out of time. Just last question based on what Sanchita just said, and anyone on the panel. There is there is a difference. Maybe not in all organizations, and maybe somebody from the audience can answer as well. There is a difference in the quantum of pay that we pay talent pool 1, that we talked about in the beginning, and what we pay talent pool 2. So in some senses, we are valuing certain kinds of skill sets, whether it's a demand supply issue or whatever, over other kinds of skill sets. Is that fair? Is that valid? Is that the way it should be? Or that needs to change?
Equality versus equity. Should we pay everybody? This has been on my mind for a while, saying, should we pay everybody equally, whether the CEO or the field worker? How many of you feel that we should pay everyone equally? Yeah? Everybody should get the same salary? People will stop underperforming. There are two people. One of them, let's say, can finish a report in 1 day. The other can do it in 5 days. If they feel the person who can do it in 1 day, we are actually underutilizing human resource. See, one of the things that we have been blamed for by the corporate...
Sorry, I'm going to rephrase. I know where you're going a little bit. I'm going to rephrase. So my question is not whether everyone should be paid the same. My question is that there are certain roles
We are
that
why?
we pay more for, and
We
there are
do.
certain roles we pay less for.
Because of the skill set and the resources being optimally utilized. I'm a student of economics also. You have to optimally utilize resources. If somebody is able to, so 20% effort, 80% impact versus 80% effort and 20% impact, obviously equity comes in there, right? Otherwise, we are underutilizing resources if we just start compensating similarly and everybody is equal. I agree. But equity also has to be there. That's where the question that you spoke about performance comes in. Then how will somebody be motivated to perform if they feel that anyway I'm going to get paid only so much? Maybe I've opened a Pandora's box.
So we have a lot of time to catch up outside. Gonna end this session. But
I just want to say one thing. I think the other problem we are doing is we are looking at it as a band-aid solution. Pay people more as a band-aid solution. There is a systemic issue here, right, which I spoke about initially, that one getting overpaid. There is an elite in this system, by the way. There is a development elite also getting created or has been created.
Yeah.
What happens if, imagine a situation where the system takes care of all the basic needs. Good education for our kids, because that is one of the most expensive things. Good health care. That all the basic needs are taken care of and people can do what they want, what drives them. In that scenario, and I'd like to leave that thought, because all of us can actually change that system. Because where we are working is also in that system, right? Systemic change. If we can change that system to make compensation as a very minuscule part of our life, because our needs are met, our wants and desires are also met, because of the system that has been structured a certain way.
Inshallah.
Can I take just 1 minute? I think lot has changed in the external environment. Report writing, then work plan and proposal writing. In order to raise fund, they have to, and you definitely need that kind of a talent. And there is a monetized value to that. So we are responding to the external environment. There could be other skills which we are not giving value to. Like for us, it is very important that you understand the issues at the ground level. So maybe that issue is being captured by somebody who's in the first category. So probably that value is not always given. But definitely you'll have to pay for the bazaar side or more value, who can raise more funds and who can also probably give that kind of, I think, visibility to the outside world, which we are also recognizing a must.
As you can see, when we had started, we promised that this will be a feeling session, and it has been a feeling session, not just a thinking session. So thank you so much to all of you and to all of you. I think one of the things that I'm going to take away from this, and something that's always on my mind, is we need more and more good talent to come into the sector. We need to figure ways of making this sector, that movement, more organic, and try and remove as many obstacles that people face in moving into the sector. Of course, many people can argue कि जिसको आना है वो आएगा, whoever wants to come will actually come. But the work that we're doing is of enormous importance. There shouldn't be an element of sacrifice in working in the sector. There shouldn't be. And I seriously, I dislike the word sacrifice, and there shouldn't be. And so what can we do to make this sector aspirational for talent? But Osama, I see that you definitely want to say something.
No, I want to say that social sector will thrive as long as we have non-performing government and non-performing governance, because that is the side business of social sector, because it's all their responsibility that they are not doing, which we have to do. And therefore, yes, you are right.
Thank you so much. I hand it over to Samrita. Thank you, everyone.